As chief, I'm certainly excited today to announce that Tsartlip has acquired this property that you see. Um, for Tsartlip, we are one of the fastest growing populations, indigenous populations here in South Vancouver Island. We have a membership that's pushing 1,100, and so with scarce land resources or land in and around the area. When this property came up for sale, we Sartlip knew that we had interest in acquiring this property, and through successful negotiations with the province, Sartlip was able to acquire what was known as Woodwind Farm. We'll announce a new name in the near future, but we are excited. I know our members are excited, and this just provides another opportunity for Tsartlip to flourish. And we know that this property, this area, was important to us prior to contact. This was an area that was full of cedar trees. It was an area that we used for ceremony, and the creek that runs through here we used as well. So the return of this land to Tsartlip to us signifies a turning of the page and reconciliation with the province, but also prosperity for Tsartlip. And we do have some work that we will be doing, reaching out to the District of Central Saanich and reaching out to our membership and hearing from our membership as to what are their plans or ideas or endeavors for this property as well. But we are certainly excited today to announce that we are the owners of this property, and certainly just a wonderful day for us today.
I heard stories of my grandparents, walking through those territories. My grandfather talked about before there was even roads built around here that they used to, if they weren't paddling around, they would have to bushwhack, kind of make their own trails over to Sayo, over in East Saanich, to visit their relatives. And you picture bushwhacking through bushes all the way that way. It would take quite a bit of time, and they would have to camp out maybe halfway through. And he has mentioned it was right where Centennial Park is now. So that's where they'd have to camp out and then continue on again the next day to go and visit their relatives. And sometimes they would follow that stream there.
My mom and dad used to tell me that our people used to go in there for the sacredness of the water. They'd use that water. And they were also saying when the apples were their ripest, there was like an orchard up the top of that hill. Our people from all over the Saanich used to all gather there at one time.
We used to have a school over there by the church. So every after school, some of us would say, let's go fishing trout. So, and then we'd be digging around all over, all the properties near there, digging for worms, for bait. So, and that's how I remember the place.
When I think about Woodwind Farms, I think about my late granduncle, Gabe Bartleman. And what I think about when I think about Woodwind, I think about Uncle Gabe and some of the words that he talked about. He talked about Woodwind Farm at one time was part of our territory and was part of our village, part of our Tsartlip community. He said that at one time it was covered with grand cedar trees, first growth cedar trees that our people used for all kinds of cultural and ceremonial purposes. They used it to make canoes. They used it for timber, for their constructing their own homes. After it became not part of our reserve lands, and was purchased by one of the settlers. He was telling me that the land and all of the trees were cleared. The trees were all cut down and they were burned. And he said that some of our people cried, and they were confused about what was going on with Woodwind Farm, with the farmlands and their lands at that time. They couldn't understand why all the trees would be cut down and just burnt and not used for any purposes. So I've always understood that was part of our community, part of our village site.
That land over there that we're reacquiring, it's Mechwich, Squesnes. We used to, there was the small creek that's there now. It used to be bigger, when we were growing up. Myself and my friends and relatives used to go up there and catch trout in that stream. And salmon used to go in there to spawn. And and that's how it ended up with the mouth of the Mechwich is called Quannas, and after the killer whale. And because the killer whale used to chase the salmon into the mouth there, right below what is Woodwind. And so that's how it got the name Quannas, and then, of course, Mechwich.
I've always been told a story of how my great-grandfather was a blacksmith and how he would work on some of the horses and had a small blacksmithing shed or shack or very close to Woodwind Farm. So I do know that, there's that history for my personal family. But beyond that, I know that it sits directly adjacent to our First Nation, and it's got a little bit of history, controversial history in the sense that when reserves were made and how they were made and how land was selected and what was included and what wasn't, and this very important piece of land that we sit next to, which is currently agricultural land in the Western sense, had many uses to our community before colonialism or before settlers came in.
I think about those kind of stories and the stories I've heard of my elders, other elders that I've had time with, and just thinking of, their footsteps still lie within, those lands and, all of our homelands. So I think of, our elders and the ancestors that did walk that land there, and, even the sacred animals that, the deer and the wolves and, everything, everything in our culture has a purpose. Everything in our walk of life has a purpose, from, the biggest animal to the smallest insect, and that's really what I think of when we, speak of the significance of that land up there. We're going to restore everything from the ground up, right from the roots, the insects and, those cedar trees growing and, bringing the wildlife back to that area.
Not too long ago, we reacquired Goldstream. They gave it back to us. And now something is huge like this. It's they're giving our land back to us. And it as Woodwind Farm. It's 193 acres, I believe. But it's Mechwich, it's Squesnes, the Tangochlatia. That's the name of the land that our people gave, that piece of land right there.
I came on to council here in 2010. And when we start talking about the history, I understand that the council in 2008 wanted to see what challenges were in front of them to able to identify, which they've identified, Woodwind Farm, that really truly believed that was ours. So from that time, I came in 2010, and we just didn't have the resources. And I was saying, why are we looking for the money to buy it? Because I truly believe that belongs to Tsartlip. Before the settlers came in, that belonged to us. And we, in the history of the way I grew up, we don't own that land. If you can understand what that means, we belong to that land. And I really, truly, 100% believe that, and every one of that.
For lack of better terms, I'm going to call it the Woodwind property. Has been a property that Tsartlip has always had interest in, being adjacent to our reserve and being close to just where we live. It's something that we've always been interested in, and maybe about in and around 2009, Tsartlip submitted a writ to sue for that property. Wasn't followed through with, but our intentions were made clear in the court system that we have interest in those properties. In 2008, the BC Housing acquired the property with help from the province to make it, to help rehabilitate those who were struggling with addictions or substance abuse, to work on the property and work on the farm. When Tsartlip learned of the announcement, we immediately reached out to BC Housing and the province to say, we are interested in acquiring this property and we should have had right of first refusal. And so subsequently we entered into negotiations immediately. And since 2018, it's gone back and forth, and we've had discussions with BC Housing. We looked at maybe some options where BC Housing would still build there or wouldn't. And anyhow, what came of those negotiations is what we announced here today, that Tsartlip acquired the entire property. I think it's a 192-acre property. Long discussions, and I think the timeliness of where Tsartlip intervened to say that, no, we need to be engaged on this, and the province has an obligation to look out for our best interests as well. So we're thankful that initially these reconciliation discussions started with the Liberal government of the day, and the discussions that we had with the Liberal government, they weren't moving on areas that we thought would benefit Tsartlip. And so elections came around, and we had an agreement that was in draft, ready to go. And our negotiations team made a recommendation to council to say, let's hold off on this because we think we can get a better deal. And so we held off, and we were able to negotiate Woodwind, which was not part of the Liberal negotiations. So there are some strategy that we put into these negotiations, and certainly a lot of frustrations that were part of this as well. But I think from filing the writ to BC Housing purchasing it, to us intervening with the province to say, you need to speak to us about this property first, and the province being agreeable to providing a grant. And this is, in many ways, reconciliation taking place, where we reconcile our indifferences and come together to decide how can we reconcile these indifferences or injustices. And by the return of this land is a step in the right direction.
That is a huge accomplishment, not for Verna or Chief of Council. It's an accomplishment that we've worked on for the Tsartlip people, our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-children that are not here yet. This is going to be opening the way, because Tsartlip land base, I always say this, you know, the fight isn't here within our nations. the fight's out there. INAC, ISK, they put us here. And it's like, pardon the word, but we've been corralled, if you may say, like cows in a pasture. We're just milling around here in the boundaries of this so-called First Nations reserve. And the fight's not within the reserve, it's out there.
Our people of the Tsartlip community have used that land in time immemorial. And I know that the families of the past are probably celebrating on the other side, knowing that this is happening for our community, and the historical piece that it goes way beyond any policies or guidelines of, the province of BC, or even it's older than the federal government of Canada. So, the land is there for our future of our community, our children. But I think of the elders of the past, the leaders of the past that have worked on getting land base back for our community.
Now that we're here today, Tsartlip are the owners of it. Starting January, we'll engage our membership as to what are their hopes and dreams for this property. And if you've, as a First Nation who has been dreaming of having more land be available, or this woodwind property so close to Tsartlip, I'm sure there are many members out there who have thought many ideas, whether it is a winery, whether it is growing cannabis or alfalfa, straw. I mean, there are things that we can do and continue to do immediately. But in the long term, we want to engage our membership to hear what their hopes and dreams are. How can we best leverage this property to get to that place of prosperity that we want to be at? And those are the discussions that we'll have with our membership. What are the benefits that we want to have? Is it economic benefits? Are they housing benefits? So we have to have those discussions, and we will in 2021. And we'll also be reaching out to the District of Central Saanich and just ensuring that we maintain a good partnership with them and keep them in the loop. And this is agricultural land reserve, so there are a few limitations of what we can do with it currently. But we have ideas and that we can continue to do currently as the land is right now in ALR.
It comes right back to the Tsartlip community. It will be their voice to give direction to what around ideas around moving forward. It's a lot to take in. The community will be finding out today, and it's very, very exciting. And it's going to be them in a driver's seat. And we just are here as workers to do the best we can at the table to accomplish.
Is a great blessing for our community. It brings a smile to my face just to know that it is our future of our kids. It is our grandchildren. It is, family that isn't even with us here yet in the future. That's what it means to them. There's many dreams, many thoughts and aspect to what that land can do for our community, what we can do with that land for our community. But I believe the community collaboration has to happen as to what the final product will be and how we will grow with that land as a community, and also celebrating and acknowledging the growth and the opportunity that we have going forward into the future.
Today's an important day. It's an important day on the Saanich Peninsula. It's an important day for the Tsartlip Nation, Tsartlip people. As has been mentioned so often by the minister and the previous minister, and as well the chief, the acknowledgement of the fact that there's so little land available in such an urban environment. And I recognize that we're on this rural, farmland, but we're so close to Victoria, and there's so much development that's happened that there's very little opportunity for discussion between the federal and provincial governments and First Nations about how to realize reconciliation, how to recognize the fact that there are vital and vibrant communities, First Nations communities, that have largely been left out of the economic picture over the last few decades. Well, 150, 160 years here on the Saanich Peninsula. And so it requires governments, it requires ministers to have imagination and creativity. It requires them to kind of step outside of what the status quo is and think in new ways. And very fortunate and I have to raise my hands up to former Minister Scott Fraser, who was from the government side of the discussion, really made a commitment and made an important part of the work that he did to engage Indigenous nations in a different way than had been done previously. And we're here today largely because of that perspective that he brought to the role as the former Minister of Indigenous Relations. I'm thankful that the new minister, Murray Rankin, gets to come and make this one of his first acts as the minister, because it really, I think, highlights the work that needs to be done, not just here in the Capital Regional District, but in Metro Vancouver and in other more urbanized areas in the province. And I think that this is going to always be a challenge for the provincial and federal government in dealing with the more urban Indigenous nations. This piece of property in particular has been, since going back to my days as a municipal councillor in the district of Central Saanich, this has been I would say, a hotly contested piece of property. There was a lot of contention around previous operators here, but I think that even going back before that, before 2010 or 2008, this piece of property has always been kind of one of those iconic operations. I remember growing up here and just on Tsartlip, just down the road, and driving on West Saanich past here and seeing the big old brown cows just kind of hanging out and munching on grass underneath underneath the trees up there. And so this has always been, I think, part of the story of the Saanich Peninsula. And Tsartlip First Nation has always identified this as an important piece to the reconciliation picture for them. And so I think here we are today, and the purchase has been made and the transfers happened and it's all legal. And now I'm very excited about the next steps of this project and this property for Tsartlip, to have a discussion about what that looks like going forward into the future.
Well, I represent, of course, the province of British Columbia. I'm the pretty new Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. And so to me, it's an enormous honor to represent the province, the Crown, in this historic occasion. I mean, this is the acquisition by the Tsartlip Nation after so many years of effort to successfully acquire 78 hectares, which is almost 200 acres of land, beautiful land, here on the Saanich Peninsula, a few kilometers from the community where majority of the Tsartlip Nation lives. And so for me, this is historic for two reasons. One, it meets the needs, partial needs of the Tsartlip community. And two, it demonstrates, I hope, to all of British Columbia, our commitment to reconciliation, our commitment to a better way forward, our commitment to decolonizing institutions in this province. That is the commitment that Premier Horgan has made. That is what I embody in my mandate as Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. So being here, to me, is just an extraordinarily happy day.
What I've learned from this, and what I've learned from being in leadership, and what I would hope for future generations when they're looking to acquire something like this, or to advance their rights, or to seek redress for past injustices, is be brave, have conviction, and do what is difficult, because there are many lives, there are many children's lives that may not have property to build a house, or we may 20 years from now outgrow woodwind. So, I would say to pursue every avenue that you have to fight for your rights, to ensure that they're maintained, and to ensure that our, what we call our Chilangan, which is our birthrights, that is given to the Creator from us, that to hold those close.
You have to make sure that you know what you're looking for, and that you keep on pushing those topics, because and you know actually where you come from and what your rights are too, and you have to be able to speak really strongly on those topics, because they'll even switch positions, right? Like, so the minister who we're signing with today isn't the minister who we negotiated with, and if they make a change in the middle of your negotiation, then you really lose a lot of that knowledge that the last minister had gained from your discussions back and forth, or their assistants, or whoever it is you may be negotiating with. So a lot of it is education, a lot of it is creating relationships where they respect you for what you have to say, and a lot of it is just staying on top of it and not letting it slip.
We also want to make sure that we're looking after the environment, that we continue to be the stewards that we are, and that we just make it a place that we want to live, and make it a place that we're proud of. And I think that's what we're trying to do here today. And we've heard from our elders, we've heard from past chiefs, we've heard from past leadership, and there's always a strong mandate to pursue that property. And so, which made it easier for leadership to pursue this property, because there's such a strong mandate that has come from our community to say, get that land back. That used to be ours. It is ours. And today it is.
It's huge for us. None of the squares tongue at the sumok at the. You know, and it's really true that you know, that land is ours. And Gels, the wrong stuff that does. And the Creator is just correcting something that was wrong way back then. And He's giving us that land back to Tsartlip. And it's huge.